The title of my talk is Deception and Information Disclosure in Advertising and Business Ethics. Business people and members of other professions frequently face ethical questions about deception and the disclosure of information. I want to begin by trying to define deception and explaining how deception differs from lying and withholding information or failing to provide information. I then try to explain why it's morally wrong to deceive other people, and very simply put, deception is wrong because it harms other people. Then I explain why deception in advertising and sales is morally wrong and discuss some cases of deception in advertising. I'll also briefly explain some American laws concerning deception in advertising and sales, and at the end of my talk, I'll address questions about the duty to provide information. So let me begin with the definitions now. First, defining deception. The shorter Oxford English Dictionary defines deception as causing other people to have false beliefs. This deception, I think, is really too broad because not every case of causing someone to have a false belief would constitute deception. If I unintentionally cause you to have a false belief, that's not deception. Suppose someone gives me a ride in a Mercedes-Benz, and I get in their car and I ride around in the car. If you see me in the car, that might cause you to believe that I'm a very wealthy person when I'm not. Now that we wouldn't say there that I deceived you about my wealth. And the car has trouble. The engine gets too hot, and the car will break down because it overheats. Well, I once took a long trip across the desert in this car. It was very hot. I had no trouble with it overheating. And that's perfectly true, but the trouble is that that was many years ago, and now the car, I know perfectly well, the car has trouble with overheating. So that would be true, but deceptive. Unlike lying, the word deception implies success. An act must actually cause someone to have false beliefs in order to count as a case of deception. We don't say I have deceived you unless I actually mislead you or cause you to have false beliefs. But you can tell a lie. I can tell you a lie, and if you don't believe me, I won't have deceived you about anything. If you know I'm lying to you when I lie to you, then I probably won't be deceiving you about anything. Okay, so now we come to the question, what's morally wrong about deception, or why is it morally wrong to deceive others? There's a very short answer here. Deception is wrong because it harms others, but that short statement needs to be explained and refined a bit. Typically, when we deceive others, we try to influence their behavior or their attitudes in some way. If I deceive you, I'm typically trying to cause you to act differently or feel differently than you would if you hadn't been deceived. So when we deceive others, we're almost always trying to influence or manipulate them. So in order to effectively promote your own well-being, you need to pursue your goals and act on the basis of true and accurate information. You're likely to harm yourself, act contrary to your interests if you act on the basis of false beliefs. Here are a few illustrations of this point. Suppose that I'm in the mountains and thirsty. I need to drink water. I go to the stream in the mountains and drink from the stream. I think the water is safe to drink, but it turns out it's near a mine. The water is full of poison, will harm me. In this case, it's disastrous for me if I act on the basis of false beliefs. An example closer to marketing would be this. If you spend a great deal of money to buy something, a piece of industrial equipment, because you think it will perform a certain task and the equipment can't do what you think it can, then you're harming your interests if you act on that belief. You're really wasting your money to buy something if it's incapable of performing the function for which you buy it. So if you act on false beliefs in cases like this, you're likely to harm your own interests. And it seems we are generally harmed when we're deceived about matters relevant to our decisions because we can't effectively pursue our goals or interests if we act on the basis of false beliefs. Now, there are exceptions, of course, but this statement is still true as a general principle. Harming others is wrong, and since deception tends to harm others, deception also tends to be morally wrong. This is my argument in brief, or my argument in a nutshell, but this really needs more explanation now. So let's talk about harming others. Harming others is not absolutely wrong or wrong in all possible cases. It is morally permissible to harm or even kill other people in self-defense. And it would be morally permissible, I think, to harm a criminal by putting them in jail and punishing them. That may harm the criminal. But harming others is prima facie wrong, or wrong other things equal. Now, I take this idea, a prima facie duty, from the English philosopher W.D. Ross. So he says a prima facie duty is a person's actual duty, other things equal. And a prima facie duty is your actual duty on the condition that it doesn't conflict with other more important prima facie duties. So Ross would say, and I agree, hope you'll agree as well, harming another person is prima facie wrong, and it's morally right or morally permissible to harm others only when harming others is necessary to fulfill some other more important obligation, or perhaps to defend yourself from a violation of your rights, as in cases of self-defense. But that said, with very few exceptions, it's morally wrong to harm someone simply in order to promote your own self-interest or the interest of your employer, or in cases of marketing, it's wrong to harm others by deceiving them to make more money for yourself or your employer, with very few exceptions, I think. Now, try to talk about deception in advertising and sales and why they're ethically wrong. And I think it's helpful to distinguish between different kinds of deception. First, there's what I will call defensive deception. This is deception to protect oneself or others from severe harm. An example of this is as follows. During the Second World War, a Polish woman, Sofia Kukla, and her husband hid many Jewish people on their farm. They were questioned about this by German soldiers, and they lied to the German soldiers, deceived the German soldiers, and their deception saved 12 people from being killed. Now, that kind of deception is often morally justified, and surely was justified in this case. A second important class of deception is what I'll call paternalistic deception. This involves deceiving another person for the good or benefit of the other person. Here's an example of this. I think parents are often involved in this kind of deception. I might try to benefit my children by deceiving them. I might exaggerate or overstate the risks of smoking tobacco so that it'll frighten them so that they'll never smoke tobacco. But my aim here is to benefit them. Now, people disagree a lot about the morality of paternalistic deception. I'm not going to say a lot about that here today. Third kind of deception is what I'm going to call self-interested manipulative deception. This kind of deception is intended to influence other people's behavior and cause them to make decisions on the basis of false information. And this kind of deception is intended to benefit oneself or one's employer. It is not done for the benefit of the consumer or the person being deceived. And clearly, I think, deception in advertising and sales, it really is of this third type. It is manipulative deception. It's not defensive. It's done for one's own benefit or the benefits of one's employer, and it is intended to influence and alter the purchasing decisions of the public, cause them to purchase things they wouldn't have otherwise purchased if they hadn't been deceived. And I think it's pretty clear that kind of deception is almost always harmful to the public, to the people who are deceived. So since harming others is prima facie wrong, and there's a strong moral presumption against deception in advertising and sales. In fact, I think that kind of deception is almost always morally wrong. And I'll talk a little bit about the golden rule here. All of us are consumers ourselves in one way or another, and we're all vulnerable to being harmed by deceptive advertising, deceptive sales tactics, and we object to it being done to ourselves. We object to being deceived and harmed. We object when people do that to those we love and care about. And I think that anyone who says it's permissible to deceive others in this way violates the golden rule, because he will object to this being done to himself or his loved ones. Buying and selling are simple market transactions. Defenders of laissez-faire capitalism claim that such transactions are mutually beneficial. It will be helpful for us to examine Milton Friedman's idea of free exchange for mutual benefit, which is the classic statement of this view. According to Milton Friedman, an economic transaction benefits both parties, provided that both parties are free and informed. Friedman writes, and this is a direct quote here, "Both parties to an economic transaction benefit from it, provided that the transaction is bilaterally voluntary and informed, or provided two conditions are met. Both parties are free, enter into the transaction voluntarily, and both parties are informed. They have knowledge." I think this is really the central idea of Friedman's book, Capitalism and Freedom. It's the basis for his famous theory about the social responsibilities of business. Friedman says, because market transactions are mutually beneficial, the market doesn't need to be heavily regulated by the government to protect people. The transactions, the market exchanges benefit all parties. He thinks, actually, because of this, there's a strong presumption against government regulations that prohibit or restrict mutually beneficial transactions. And because market exchanges are beneficial, it's morally permissible for businesses and people in the marketplace to pursue their own self-interest. No individual needs to concern himself with the interests of others, because other people are capable of promoting their own interests and welfare. So this is the basis of his famous theory about the social responsibilities of business. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. I'll quote this briefly. He writes, "There is one and only one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits, so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud." Note that Friedman doesn't say that all market transactions are mutually beneficial. He says that market transactions benefit both parties, provided that both parties are informed and enter into the exchange voluntarily. In cases of deception in advertising and sales, the consumer is not informed, or perhaps misinformed, so there is no reason to think that that person's choices, purchasing decisions, are beneficial to her. Indeed, I think it's clear when you're deceived, your decisions are likely to harm you. So according to Milton Friedman, The pursuit of profit and economic self-interest is morally wrong if one engages in deception. And I think almost everyone agrees with that point. So both Milton Friedman's admirers and his critics will agree deception in business is morally wrong. Now let me give you an example of deception in advertising and explain in more detail why I think this is morally wrong. And I'm going to pick a fairly clear case. So you know of the American company Sears? It's a big retail store. They market many of their own products and appliances. So they sold a dishwasher some years ago, and they ran ads which falsely claimed that their dishwasher could completely clean dishes, pots, and pans without prior rinsing or scraping, and it also claimed they have an extra hot final rinse for the dishes that would kill all the germs. And these ads were quite successful. The Sears dishwasher sold very well, gained a big market share, and harmed the competitors of Sears. They sold fewer dishwashers. And the U.S. Federal Trade Commission found the ad really influenced people's decisions and caused a substantial number of people to purchase the dishwasher. Since the people who bought the Sears dishwasher acted on the basis of false claims, many of them presumably would have preferred not to purchase it had they not been deceived. And in those cases, the harm was considerable. The dishwashers cost hundreds of dollars. Now, in this case, the Sears company clearly knew that the claims made in the ads were false. Sears itself ran tests that indicated the dishwasher wouldn't clean the dishes unless you rinsed them and scraped them first. In fact, the owner's manual for the dishwasher instructed people to rinse and scrape their plates before putting them in the dishwasher. So the Sears owner's manual was used as evidence that its ads were deceptive. And further, even after the Sears company received many complaints from consumers that the dishwasher wasn't doing what it said, it continued to run the ads. And mention one other thing. It was advertised as something to use for baby bottles. You kill all the germs with a dishwasher, and that way you can use the dishwasher for baby bottles. You don't need to sterilize it. Just put it in the dishwasher. Potentially, this could have harmful health consequences for infants if you thought that the dishwasher was completely cleaning or sanitizing the baby's bottle. It seems to me that advertisers who practice deception violate the golden rule. They themselves are consumers. And we should also note this. As an advertiser, you want consumers to trust advertising and believe the claims of advertising. And since you want, as an advertiser or marketer, for people to trust advertising, you can't be willing to have all advertisers practice deception. Because if deception in advertising were a universal practice, very few people would trust it, and it would be difficult for advertising to be a successful business. And so if an advertiser who practices deception can't really will or desire that other people do what they're doing. A person who practices deception wants to make a special exception for themselves. So if I practice deception, I want other advertisers to be honest, so people will generally trust the claims of advertising. And if everyone is dishonest like me, then no one will trust advertising. Okay.